Hey guys, welcome to Amity Tracks. And it is finally here. I say finally, he only announced it a couple months ago, so there hadn't been this, too long of a wait. But we have the Nebraska Deluxe Edition, right? Yeah, or Nebraska 82 Deluxe Edition, whatever he's calling it. And let's talk about it. Which of course includes Electric Nebraska, which has been the holy grail for Springsteen collectors. We'll talk about if it lives up to the hype, literally of decades. So, there's a little bit of background. I mean, most of you guys know the story here. By the way, it's been a hell of a year for Springsteen fans, hasn't it? I mean, with Tracks 2, these, 6, 7, I don't even remember. Um, Unreleased albums, and say that loosely, but at least 6 or 7 albums of material. Got the movie. Now this crazy. Anyway, let's talk about this. This is the latest in these deluxe edition releases. He started with Born to Run, and went through Darkness on the Edge of Town, then The River, and now this. And you have to imagine at least we have Born in the USA coming, because there's a lot of extra material from those sessions. And then who knows beyond that. But yeah, so you've got, like I said, I got the CD version. I'll get the vinyl version eventually. I assume it's similarly packaged. But you got 5 discs in here, 1 Blu-ray, 4 CDs in this case. Of course, a remaster of the original Nebraska, which those records from that era were already remastered not too long ago. I don't know. I honestly hear much difference in that. Plus, it's all supposed to be lo-fi anyway, so you can remaster the lo-fi. But then you have a disc of extra outtakes, which were also from that the famed cassette tape that was in his pocket forever. He also then went into the studio to try and kind of maybe get some better sound on some of these solo acoustic songs, but those songs didn't hold kind of the same magic. But you got some of those sessions on here too. Then, of course, the crown jewel, right? Or I mean, why most of us are so excited about this Electric Nebraska. He went into the studio with really not the entire E Street Band, but at least different configurations of the E Street Band to try and at least kind of lay down some, some basic, versions of these songs, kind of work them up, see where they go, basically record them, make an album. And of course, wasn't happy with those versions. Sort of lost some of the mystique that he felt that were in these demos. So, but Springsteen fans have been pining for Electric Nebraska for decades. And then Count Basie Theater, he decided that since he had never really properly toured these songs in this form, they've been playing Nebraska songs for decades, but it's been with the full band, so he had never really toured these songs properly. He wanted to get a kind of a live recording, so they rented out the Count Basie Theater in Red Bank, New Jersey, no audience, and recorded earlier this year him going through this whole album start to finish, and solo acoustic. Filmed it, so you've got the CD here, but there's also a Blu-ray in here, that you can watch of the show. No audience, and he had 2 guys with doing accompaniment with him, but very light accompaniment. It's not like a band version of this. It sounds very solo acoustic, but just adding a little bit of a 12 string on something, or a little bit of light synthesizer in the back, or the Celeste, or a little bit of mandolin on Atlantic City, that kind of thing. And anyway, well, we're going to talk about all of it. So you guys know the story, right? I'm sure you know the story. He had just finished touring for The River, had kind of reached a new peak of stardom, and was ready to take the next step into superstardom into the 80s. And record companies salivating, waiting for the next thing, which the record company wanted Born in the USA, right? So he's kind of reaching this crossroads, sort of with his mental health and everything else. So he rents this house in New Jersey and records these songs alone on. I got to read it so I get the technical specs right. A TIAC Tascam 144 Porta Studio, a first-of-a-kind consumer 4-track cassette recorder, then mixed down through an Echoplex reverb to a water-damaged Panasonic boombox that ran at the wrong speed, according to the very good. And these sets always do liner notes, a nice essay about the whole process here with some, good photographs from the era. Let's see, yeah, a lot of dark black and white weather and everything, right? So yeah, the essay is good, and it points out that these songs were, recorded really without the intention. He wasn't recording these songs, thinking that they were going to be released. So it really was kind of a look into his process and all that. Um, as he pointed out in the essay, they're kind of like field recordings. I thought that was a good description of them. And and you can tell from, at least especially for some of the outtakes and some of the takes on Electric Nebraska, as Bruce said in the essay, quote, he was working with some sort of punkish rockabilly sound that's kind of noiry, which really does fit some of this extra material that you hear on this thing. It comes through on some of that stuff. And it's funny in the essay, Bruce is quoted. He seems kind of baffled at this process. In retrospect, so what was I working with? But it's kind of cool, and you get a lot of this here, right? And you got to remember how unusual this was, for a major artist. I mean, now it's not that unusual for somebody to kind of go lo-fi and really, but it was for an artist of this stature in early '80s, 1982. And one of the main reasons it's not so unusual anymore is because he broke the ground in doing this. So anyway, well, let's go disc by disc, right? So I guess we'll just go in order. As go through the set here, it starts with the outtakes. Okay, starts with the outtakes, and it's cool to have all this stuff in one place. Kind of for the full picture. Some were from that demo tape. And that was kind of famously, he's carrying around in his pocket for a while before they decided to go with it. And he did go into the studio to try and get some cleaner versions of some of these songs and record some of these other songs. Didn't quite have the magic, of that demo tape, but some of those are on here too. So on this Nebraska outtakes, some of these are like recorded very cleanly, even more cleanly than some of the stuff on Nebraska, right? And so it's pretty cool to hear that. So what's on there? You do get some tracks that eventually we heard as different versions of songs. Of course, the Born in the USA demo is on there, which is awesome and raw. But we've heard that came out on the original tracks collection. So we've heard that, but it's here. It's appropriately here. In fact, opens the whole set. The Big Payback, which we've heard, that was a B-side at some point. And then some interesting works in progress: Downbound Train, Pink Cadillac, Working on the Highway. All pretty dramatically different versions. Downbound Train, very different song here. You get an unhinged version of it on Electric Nebraska. We'll get to that in a second, but kind of an acoustic version of that unhinged version. I mean, you won't musically not recognizable, but of course the lyrics are there. Downbound Train's interesting. I had no idea it had such this process, right? I mean, you have this acoustic version here, then you have this Electric Nebraska version. Then, on tracks 2, you had the garage sessions, 83, which was kind of this interesting period in between Nebraska and Born in the USA, where he was kind of the bridge, so to speak. And he doesn't have a version of Downbound Train on there, but the lyrics from Downbound Train are used in like 2 different songs on that garage sessions 83. And and then eventually you get Downbound Train on Born in the USA, a very different version there, which I think he did get to the best version on Born in the USA. It's my favorite song on Born in the USA, so love that. But it's fascinating to hear here in this very different raw. It's like kind of psychobilly. It's crazy. It's like versions on here. Pink Cadillac is very quiet and noir and slowed down. Really creepy, actually. But then there are some, kind of new songs. Some of these not heard anywhere other than on bootlegs and such. But you got the Losing Kind, which is kind of another sort of criminal and his girl narrative tale. Very good, but similar in theme in some ways to the song Nebraska, to Highway 29 on Ghost of Tom Joad. So you can see why, just kind of one too many, right? Kind of why he left that off. On the Prowl is interesting. It's kind of full of reverb and spook. It's kind of, sort of state trooper-ish, I guess, in some ways, but even more reverb. And then Gun in Every Home, which I think is a kind of a fascinating lyrics. What's the refrain is very interesting. Here, I gotta find this. Electric Nebraska. Here it is. Gotta find the lyrics in here because he does provide all the lyrics, even to the unreleased stuff. Um, yeah, 2 cars in each garage and a gun in every home. Kind of the refrain in the chorus. Um, Sort of talking about, I don't know, suburban angst, but it's a very prescient song too. That was pretty interesting. And then Child Bride, which is really fascinating. It's a kind of an early version of Working on the Highway, but musically completely different. Slow acoustic kind of finger pick stuff, and leans a lot more into the kind of disturbing theme of the older guy with an underage girl and the whole thing. Um, but I mean that the song is of quality that could have been on Nebraska, I think. So anyway, yeah, the outtakes, very interesting, very interesting. Let's talk about the. Why don't we finish with the Electric Nebraska, right? Because that's kind of what everyone wants to talk about. So real briefly, like I said, the remaster of the album Nebraska. I mean, it's good, but I don't hear all that much difference than the remaster he did in the last 10 years or whatever it was. Plus, the whole lo-fi nature of it. I mean, you want a crisp, clean lo-fi. Yeah, I don't know, whatever. It's fine. It's great. Obviously, Nebraska had to be included in here, in the set. So there it is. Um, I think the Count Basie show. Now, I have not watched the Blu-ray yet. I imagine it is beautifully done, so I'm looking forward to watching it. But yeah, I've listened to it, of course. Kind of really reviewing the music here. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the Blu-ray. But that was kind of the real surprise here, because that was for me that was sort of an afterthought. Um, I'm salivating for Electric Nebraska here, but his reasoning was he never really properly toured it or anything as an acoustic piece, so he kind of wanted to rectify that. And I mean, the sound is just the production is gorgeous. They got a beautiful sound in that theater. Gorgeous sound. Bruce is in fine voice. Obviously, the age and kind of gruffness in his voice, is different than when he originally recorded these songs. But that's the charm of this disc. There's kind of a rugged wisdom to these songs, that wasn't in the original. And I gotta say, I love it. The accompaniment by these two guys he has playing with them. One of them is, kind of a current touring member of the E Street Band. I forget his name. Um, and the other one, I think it played with Bob Dylan or something. Anyway, is very tasteful. Never overshadows the songs, but really kind of adds a little bit of color to the songs. Just like Bruce was doing it on a 4-track, so he was able to layer tracks even when he did it on the original thing. So you had the mandolin on Atlantic City is able to be added here with one of these other guys. So I think it's fantastic. I mean, it's gorgeous. How many times I'm going to pull it out in the future and play it, I don't know, but it's gorgeous. Yeah, it really is. But okay, what are we all waiting for here, right? Electric Nebraska. Holy Grail. I mean, we've been waiting for this for decades. As Springsteen fans, is it worth it? Sort of. And even just being sort of worth it, it's great to have some of this stuff. I mean, in a sense, could it ever live up to the expectations? Rarely do these sort of lost albums, completely live up to the legend. for various reasons. Um, but yeah, is it worth it? So why don't I'm going to go through track by track, quickly, but let's talk about. So it opens with Nebraska, just like the Nebraska album does. This is one of the cases where I like this version better than the Nebraska version. I think the additional band really enhances this song, because it's not overwhelming. The focus is still on the lyrics and the story, but you get some very kind of nice bass in there, kind of soft drums in the background, some light synthesizers. Um, that to me really adds to the mood of the piece, and I, for me, I'm going to say the Electric Nebraska version is now my definitive version of the song Nebraska. I think it's fantastic. Moving on to Atlantic City. Um, Now, that song, of course, has been played electrically, kind of in this arrangement, for decades. If you have the plugged, album from the Human Touch Lucky Town tour, um, it's on there. If you've seen any shows, I mean, they play it all the time in this version. Yeah, that's a song in some sense that. You hear it and it's sort of ready made for a band, to rock out on. Now, I will say the plugged version and a lot of these live versions you can get everywhere, kind of are more, I think, rocking than this version. Yeah, I mean, this is what it is, right? It's they're just kind of getting familiar with the song. They're just starting to lay down these tracks, and so they get a lot more confident, later in the live arena, just really rocking out on this. But it still captures that kind of rock arrangement. But instead of the synthesizer playing that line that you hear in the live versions all the time, Bruce is still doing it on the harmonica, which is pretty cool. Uh, this is tough because I I love the Nebraska, the acoustic, the original version of Atlantic City. There's something just magical about that. So I would never want to replace it. But it's almost like he's played this song so much electrically that this electric version is legit too. So it's cool to have a studio electric version of that. Let's put it that way. Then comes Mansion on the Hill. Honestly, never a favorite song of mine on the original Nebraska, so I don't mind messing with it because I never loved it all that much to begin with. And again, it's very kind of light accompaniment on this, a little bit of bass, a little bit of synth. I actually, the electric Nebraska version kind of creates almost sort of a my hometown mood to it, just kind of a little bit of, in some ways, kind of like what I said with Nebraska, kind of this sort of enhancing the mood. So I think it works. But like I said, the original version is not sacred to me in the first place. So then Johnny 99, which to me, you know, you hear the acoustic version like that, or the acoustic version that's on the 75-85 live box set is almost like crying for a more rockin' arrangement. So he finally gets one here. It does kind of rock hard and kind of, I don't know. I think benefits from it. Then there's Downbound Train, one of two songs that eventually end up on Born in the USA, but were done in these sessions. And like I said, totally unhinged, almost punk. Like, it's crazy. Whereas the version we know and love from Born in the USA is very melancholy, and it has that unforgettable riff, that great kind of part in the middle where it really goes down to the synths and gets quiet. None of that's here. I mean, this is just 100 miles an hour, kind of punk rock. I won't say rockabilly, but it's sort of almost punk energy. It's unhinged. It's crazy. It's cool to have. Um, for me, like I said, the eventual version on Born in the USA is my favorite song on that album. One of my favorite Springsteen songs. I would never want to replace that. And I think he got it right on that. But this is really cool to have. I mean, different song, really. Just same lyrics. Instead of that melancholy of, the Born in the USA version, it's just anger. So it's kind of interesting. It kind of reshapes the lyrics in some way, just with the music accompaniment. Then you got Open All Night, which I think is fantastic. Really benefits from the band. Now there's three. So he never had like the full E Street band on these sessions. There's like some of them with a quintet, and then there's about three songs on here with a trio. It's just Bruce, Max Weinberg on drums, and Gary Tallon on bass. And that would have been, because it's open all night, a version of Born in the USA, and then Reason to Believe. I think. Am I right? Are those the ones with the trio, or maybe it's Johnny? Anyway, I know the Born in the USA and Open All Night, I think, have the trio, and then I forget if the third song with the trio is it's either Johnny 99 or Reason to Believe. I'm forgetting which, but anyway, um, that would have been an intriguing path to follow. What if this album had been done with this stripped down, kind of gritty trio? Because Open All Night sounds awesome in this trio setting, as does, of course, the next song, Born in the USA. And that he released ahead, so we've been able to stream that for weeks and weeks. So a lot of you guys have heard that, but it is fantastic. I mean, it is. Does it rival the original? I don't know. It's a fascinating thing to trace Born in the USA through its creation now, right? I mean, you've got this raw acoustic version, then you have this version, this electric Nebraska version, then you get to the album version, and then of course various live versions after that. It's a fascinating kind of tracing of its development. I don't know. This, I'll tell you this. This is gritty. You don't have that kind of pop synthesizer line, that Roy Bittan laid down. That is kind of got the song on the radio. It's kind of this that's not there. Like I said, this is just done in this trio, just bass, guitar, and drums, and the raw energy, kind of anger and rage in Bruce's singing here is I I think this version captures the lyrics the best. I mean, Ronald Reagan would never have wanted this in a political ad. Let's put it that way. Uh, there's no question. This is an angry, song. It's not a patriotic tune, which a lot of people mistook the original for because of that. That eventual arrangement, which again made it a hit single, but kind of lost the meaning in the lyrics a little bit. This, you don't lose the meaning in the lyrics. That's awesome. That's awesome. And then Electric Nebraska closes with a Reason to Believe, which, in my opinion, also benefits from the accompaniment. Kind of all this is sort of rockabilly thing. It is really good. I think it's fantastic. Now, a lot of people do love the raw acoustic version on Nebraska. Would I replace it? I don't know, but I think this is a fantastic version. So, that's Electric Nebraska. It, like some of the albums that were advertised on Tracks 2, it's not really a complete album. I mean, this is, if you know the story, what was advertised, right? I mean, they were in the studio starting to work on these songs, and Bruce isn't feeling it, so he cuts it off. This is not like a completed album ready to go, and then he shelves. I compare it in a lot of ways. Stay with me on this because you're gonna be like, what? Kind of like Smile, kind of like the Beach Boys' Smile. It's like like Electric Nebraska. There really is not a real Smile out there because it was never finished. It's like Electric Nebraska was never really finished. But it's something. It's something that fans, you know, fantasized about, put together in their heads. In Electric Nebraska, well, no, in Smile's case, a lot of these songs did wind up on later albums, but maybe different versions. So you did have at least a better idea of what Smile sounded like than say Electric Nebraska. But it's and so when they finally do give you a version of it, right? It's awesome to have, but it's still elusive. It's still like I feel like I have it, but I still don't really have an Electric Nebraska because it's not complete. It's not totally there because it never was complete. Like Smile, right? So that's my comparison. But I there are two songs from Nebraska. So my three favorite songs on Nebraska: it's Atlantic City, State Trooper, and Highway Patrolman. And you know, State Trooper and Highway Patrolman, you don't have Electric Nebraska versions of. So, you know, I now there are electric versions of those songs on numerous bootlegs and all of that out there. So, you know, if I were making my perfect Electric Nebraska, I would still have to kind of doctor it up a little bit. I would have to find some of these electric versions of State Trooper and Highway Patrolman. Highway Patrolman, there's a lot of great electric versions of out there. Um, State Trooper, if you get on YouTube, there's this bootleg version from the Born in the USA tour. I forget the date and all that, but it's easy to find. You just Google it, which is an awesome electric arrangement of that. That, you know, if you had like that kind of arrangement, I'd put that on there. Anyway, you know, so if I were making my perfect, you know, Electric Nebraska, you know, I would still have to, like I said, kind of doctor it up a little bit. Am I glad we have it now? Hell yeah. I mean, you know, what is there, I think, is a lot of it's fantastic. It's great to hear kind of this alternate road of what could have been. Just understanding that, you know, these probably are not the final arrangements of what would have been an electric album anyway. I mean, they were just starting to work on it. Yeah. So, you know, with these impossible expectations, it is still really fantastic to have, you know, this stuff. So, yeah. Anyway, there you go. That's kind of my, you know, my review of this. Um, I don't know. Want to give me star rating? 4 out of 5 stars. You know, I mean, you know, and I guess the ultimate question is, you know, did he make the right decision? Yes, he did. You know, I think that's the answer. Did he make the right decision in releasing what he had, those demos? I think he did. I think he did. But it's so nice to have the full picture here. Um, you know, there's some really nice outtakes, which were a nice surprise. I love this Count Basie Theater, this live thing, a lot more than I thought I would. I thought it would just kind of be a, you know, toss off thing, and then we finally do have um, Electric Nebraska. We have the questions answered, like what is out there as Electric Nebraska. We have it, and there's a few songs that you know, I will probably consider the definitive versions now, like Nebraska, like Reason to Believe, um, like Johnny 99. Toss up on Born in the USA. It's hard to say, but that is an incredible version of that song. But then the rest of them are really cool to have too. So yeah, I'm glad we have it. So yeah, Springsteen fan, I would definitely recommend this. I mean, it's kind of a must-have if you're a fanatic. So those are my thoughts. Well, let's hear it in the comments. What do you guys think if you've listened to this stuff? Well, you know, what are your thoughts on it? Let's talk Nebraska '82 expanded edition and Electric Nebraska in particular, if you want. So we'll see you next time on Amity Tracks. I got some stuff I'm real excited about coming up, so we'll get to that. But anyway, we'll see you next time.